Hey middle schoolers, what's up? If you don't know me yet, my name is Brent and I am the student pastor over at the Mandarin campus. And I get to talk to you today about something that's a pretty hot topic. It's something that's pretty big, it's pretty difficult, and it's something that a lot of us deal with a lot of the times in our lives, and this is a topic of arguing. Everybody argues all the time. We always have things that we argue about. Everybody's got a point of view that they have and they want to tell other people and help persuade them about it. And the definition of arguing is actually reason or reasons with the aim of persuading someone. There's a reason why you believe this thing, or there's a reason why you believe that thing. And when you talk to somebody else about it, you want them to believe the same thing that you're believing. You want to convince them that, hey, this is a good thing to believe and this is a good way to believe this thing. But there's another definition for arguing, and it's typically what we tend to see more often, and it goes like this: an exchange of opposing views, typically in a heated and angry manner. Now, I don't know about you, but there's an argument for just about everything, and I've been in plenty of arguments in my life. There's an argument for, is LeBron the GOAT or is Jordan the GOAT? Is Apex better than Fortnite? Are Reese's Cups better than candy corn at Halloween? And if you think candy corn's gross, then, we got some issues, and we'll talk about that later. But anyway, there are arguments for just about everything out there. It's, Ford and Chevy, Marvel, DC, all these different things that we have arguments about. And there are people who like one side or the other for specific reasons. They have their reasons for liking those things. But when they get into a discussion with somebody who doesn't like that thing, a lot of times it can become an argument. And I don't know if you've noticed, but in my life at least, a lot of the times, the majority of the arguments that I have are with people who are really close to me. And every other argument is usually with somebody who I at least have some sort of relationship with. Now, if you get on social media or you get online or you get on, a message board and you just start arguing with people for different things, now that's a whole different ballgame. But the majority of arguments that you would get into in a normal day, or discussions or disagreements that you're going to get into, are with somebody that you have a relationship with. So for me, I am married, and my wife Jenna and we have some disagreements. We have some things that we believe that are different. We agree on about like 80 to 90% of things, but there are some things that we disagree on. And I don't know if you've met my dog Gus, but we have an English bulldog. His name's Gus. He's cute. He's adorable. But anyway, Jenna and I disagree on some things about our dog Gus and how to take care of him. We both agree that we need to take care of him and we love him and care for him, because that's what you do when you own a pet. You take care of your pet. And we agree that we are supposed to do that. But what that looks like, we don't always necessarily agree on that. For example, taking him out to the bathroom. I just think you can open up the back door, let him go in the backyard, and he's going to run around and go to the bathroom because he's a dog and that's what he does. My wife thinks that you have to open up the back door and then stand at the back door and watch him to make sure that he feels safe and comfortable and knows that you're here for him in case a hawk comes and grabs him. We've had some discussions about this, and sometimes the discussion about this hasn't been, it's gotten a little heated, I guess, because I'm for just letting him go out and run in the backyard and be a dog. And she's against that because that's her baby. And at the end of the day, we both agree that that is our baby dog. He's ours. We love him and we care about him. It's just that we have a stance that we don't agree on. And I'm for this and she's against this. And I'm against what she's saying and she's for what she's saying. And the fact is that we both have a reason to believe what it is that we believe. The danger in arguments, though, is that when we are really, really passionate about something, when it's something we really believe in, and we want to and we end up in an argument with somebody, we want to get to the point where we just win the argument. A lot of times it gets to the point where we just don't even care about their opinion. We don't care about that person. We don't care about what they're thinking. I just want to win. I want you to think of things the way that I think of things, and that's it. And there's a couple different tactics that we use to do that. We can yell at somebody. We can get silent or get really quiet, because then they have to lean in and they have to understand what you're saying. If we're arguing through text or social media, sometimes we ghost people, because if I'm not there, you can't argue with me, I win. But what we see a lot of times is people will actually attack the person. It's not even the idea that they hold that starts to get attacked. It's the person themselves. Like, oh, if you think that, candy corn is gross, then you're a terrible person and I don't like you. And that's just not a fair way to go about an argument. That's not a fair thing, because at the end of the day, if you are going to argue that much to the point where you're making somebody feel bad because they hold a specific view, you're really not showing them the love of Jesus at that point. Because Jesus got into a lot of arguments, and even though Jesus got into arguments with people, when he got into an argument with them, he cared more about that person and their salvation and about where their heart was and what they were doing than he cared about necessarily being right. Now, Jesus is always going to be right because Jesus is God, and he's always going to be right. But the fact is that he was more concerned about that person and what they believed and how they acted and how they acted on what they believed than he was about just being right, because he cared about the person. And the fact is, while you might win the argument, you might lose a relationship. And the fact is when you get into an argument and you start attacking the person and not just the way that they think or the way that they're believing, you actually get to the point where you're starting to attack them and you've completely forgotten about their ideas because you just want to win the argument. And while you might win the argument, you might lose the relationship. When we look in the Bible, there are a couple of different books that were written that are based on the idea of wisdom and what it means to be wise in God's eyes. And if you've ever read the book of James, James is a book of wisdom, and he tells us about ways to be wise in Jesus' eyes. James was actually Jesus' brother, and he really didn't actually even agree with what Jesus was teaching until after Jesus came back from the dead. And so James even kind of disagreed with his own brother, his own flesh and blood brother, about what he was teaching, and didn't actually really start following Jesus, like I said, until he came back from the dead and proved that he was God. But once James saw that this is what he's saying is true, who he says he is, James was all about it. And he became one of the most important writers, to the point where his book that he wrote ended up in the Bible. And this is a book on wisdom and how to be wise in Jesus' eyes. And so when he talks about what we can do when we have a disagreement with somebody, or what we can do when we have a differing opinion from other people, and this is in James 1:19, and it says, "Be quick to listen, be slow to speak, and be slow to get angry." When we find ourselves disagreeing with somebody, we need to be quick to listen. Before we even react and before we even say anything, we need to be quick to listen. This is also called active listening. It's listening to understand that person, listening to understand where they're coming from, and not just listening to hear enough to clap back. And after we're quick to listen, we need to be slow to speak. We need to process what it is that they're saying, try to understand them, and then think of what the right response, what a proper response would be to that person, instead of just clapping back. And it's important, especially when it's a heated argument or something that really gets you upset, to be slow to anger, because the person is more important than your point. The person that you are in a disagreement with or that you're in an argument with is more important than the point you are trying to make. Because again, while you might win the argument, you could lose the relationship. So what are some practical ways to handle arguments better? Well, number one, I would say that we should all do this, is memorize James 1:19. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And if we memorize that and we keep that in our mind, just like every other scripture that you memorize, you start to really grasp that concept and you start to actually live it out. You're quick to listen, you're slow to speak, and you're slow to get angry with other people. And so it's important to memorize this scripture, just like every other scripture that we memorize. It's important to know this because we can actually live this out when it's really, really soaked into our brain. So memorize. And then the second thing is empathize. Empathy is just trying to understand where that other person's coming from. And the fact is that everybody has an opinion and a point of view because of the life experiences that have brought them to believing that. So you don't know necessarily everything that has gone into somebody believing what it is that they believe, but the fact is that things that have happened in their life and things they've been taught in the past have forced them to start thinking the way that they think, and have put them in a position where they do believe what it is that they believe. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's just how people come to believe things. So we need to empathize with others and understand and try to understand, why does this person believe what this is, instead of saying, oh, I hate that you believe this, or I hate that you believe that, and you're a terrible person. It's what got this person to that point to believe the thing that they believe that I disagree with. When we get into an argument, it's more important to care about the person that we disagree with than the point that we're trying to make. I mentioned my wife Jenna, and that we have a disagreement on how to take our dog out. And the fact is I love her more than anything else in this world except for Jesus. And the fact is that at the end of the day, we can disagree on things and I still love her. And it doesn't change the fact that I love her. And so when you have a friend or you have a family member or you have somebody at school that you have a relationship with and you get into a disagreement with, you need to keep in mind, to be slow to speak, quick to listen, and slow to anger. And we also need to empathize and try to understand where that person got to this idea, or how that person got to believing in what it is that they believe, because the person is more important than your point. And this is the cool thing about our small groups is the fact is everybody in your small group is not going to agree 100% on everything with you. Your small group leader might not agree 100% on everything with you. And the fact is we all are part of Jesus's family. And sometimes we don't necessarily agree with things that Jesus is telling us to do, but Jesus is always right because Jesus is God. And so it's important in our small groups to continue to point each other to Jesus. And when we do have things that are different from what Jesus wants us to believe, to help each other see that and grow through it, because our relationships are more important than our points or our stances or our arguments that we have to make. And when it comes down to it, if we all are agreeing with what Jesus is saying, that we follow Jesus, then we can get along with people in spite of the fact that we believe a lot of different things other than that. That's the most important thing, is if we both believe in Jesus, if we both follow Jesus, everything else we can just figure it out as we go along and do it with grace, do it with empathy, and do it in love. And so as you go into your groups today, I want you to think about when you have gotten into arguments in the past or when you get into arguments in the future, are you going to argue to win, or are you going to try to understand and ask questions and find out where that person is coming from?